This is still the first week of 20th century. This is the week of, April 6th through the 10th. Our architecture slide. Yay! I know you guys love architecture. This one's pretty cool. This one is called Villa Savoye, and it's by the architect. Okay, make sure you got the architect's name is, it's pronounced Le Corbusier. This is right outside also of Paris. This is in a city town called Poissy-sur-Seine. Again, this is just outside of Paris. Done in 1929. And the material, okay, this is a non-traditional material that we've seen up to this point. We're seeing steel and reinforced concrete. And what you can classify the style is going to be under international style for architecture. Okay, so the style, the movement for Le Corbusier's Via Savoy is international architecture. Excuse me, international style architecture. Okay. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about some of the features that are on this particular building that I would like for you to just kind of point out. If you notice, I did a photo where you can see at least two sides instead of the one that you have where it's just directly on. So you can still take the same kind of note if you can. Just note for the four sides all in general, because this is just generally in the shape of a square. All four sides look almost identical, and I think where they're getting that is it's just all the same shape, that rectilinear, white rectilinear shape that we see. And then we also see, as my computer wants to skip around, we also see the use of the windows, okay, and the lights. And yes, these parts do not have windows, but we still see that same area being used as, like, for instance on this one where we see this whole area of ribbon being cased from end to end in windows. So we still somewhat get that sense, that same kind of repetition being shown on this side as well. Okay. So no traditional facade. You really don't even know which side is the front. All four sides look almost identical. What I do want you to note is on top, this top floor, this is a rooftop garden with a curving wind block, and we'll get to see a little video at the very end that'll show us a little bit more of what this looks like. This section right here, so if you just wanted to put off to the side, so technically you could classify this as the second floor. This is the main living area. And then down below, the first level is the driveway, okay? And this can be held up to held up to a three-car garage, and this is where the servants area is also located, so down at the bottom. If you also notice, the building itself, um, it's being held up by the piers, okay, and they're called pilotes, and we'll talk about that for a little bit later on. But if you just can note, these are going to be their columns, but we're going to call them piers or pilotes, okay? And then if you also notice, the last thing I just wanted you to point out is the fact that this whole structure, it's just being stood up on these piers. So when you're looking at this, you can tell that the heavier elements are above the lighter elements. So you can kind of see more space being depicted down below as opposed to this second level where we see it just be completely just a box in itself. Okay? Oh, and also for the note about the piers, if you notice, there's actually a little bit of distance in between from the very edge, so they're set back from the exterior of the walls, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we continue on. So again, this is going to represent our one international style of architecture. It's rejecting, and this is what I'd like for you to include in your notes. It's rejecting all ornamentation, okay? You don't see anything ornate. If you think about the Carson Perry Scott Company building, the outside of the facade where we saw that cast iron, the vegetative entrance, it was very ornate and very much in the Art Nouveau. We're not seeing any of that. We're seeing it be just completely stripped away. So this is going to reject ornamentation and also eclecticism. Eclecticism. which means it's just the borrowing from earlier styles. We're not seeing any of that. So, as far as tradition of stone and wood construction, he's breaking away from the earlier idea to have the idea of a building as a mass and the idea of a building being as a mass. So, the international style of architecture emerges in Europe. That's where it comes from, and it's from the time period of the 1920s and the 30s. So this is our example that represents our next step into modern architecture. So this is basically the building that we've seen after the Louis Sullivan, again, the Carson Peary Scott and Company building. As Sullivan, if you remember, when we were talking about the actual construction of that skyscraper, using a steel frame construction rather than exterior walls to support the structure. So that's what we're going to see here. And also broke away from all architecture of the past by inventing his own wrought iron decoration. Um, I think you also have another image, and we'll talk about it. It's the spiral staircase, and we'll be able to discuss that shortly. Um, let's see. So, also continuing on with our discussion about Louis Sullivan, if you also remember, there was three words that I said kind of defined his type of style of architecture. Form follows function. Okay, we're gonna see now Le Corbusier's statement about what he's gonna be um, starting to just kind of pay attention to. And again, the form follows function was the appearance of a building should be an honest reflection of its function. So the international style artists create even more radically modern buildings. So what Le Corbusier's his philosophy is going to be associated with the efficiency of machines. Okay, we're going to talk about machines. How he called his houses machines for living. Okay, so that's going to be like his little tag of words. His houses are made his excuse me, his houses are machines for living. He summed it up in an idea that he had in 1926 when he wrote an essay, and he spelled out the 5 points of new architecture for the new industrial world. And this is what I would really emphasize, really recommend that you write this down. You might have already written this down, that there were 5 points of new architecture. We need to highlight each of those so that we can just understand this a little bit more. And this kind of defines this building specifically. So number one is you're going to lift the building above the ground level on piers. And again, those piers, if you remember, begin also with a P. Give you a second. Pilotes, okay? And it's spelled Pilotis. And this leaves the bottom level for the automobile. And in this video that I'm going to show you in a little bit, it'll actually show you kind of how the automobile moves around down below. Okay, so number one, lift the building above the ground level on piers. Number two, put the load-bearing piers inside, not on the exterior of the structure. This relieves the facade of its structural function, enabling the exterior walls to be, and then we're going to get into number three. So let me just one more time repeat myself for that. Put the load-bearing piers inside, not on the exterior of the structure. Okay. So this is going to go into our number three, is this long interrupted span of glass. And as you can see it on this side view, you can see it all the way from one end to the other, and you can see it slightly having it be portrayed on this side. If we were to look at the other two sides, we would see something very similar. So, and that's really going to help with the windows along with allowing all the light to be equal to lit to excuse me to allow light to be equally distributed throughout. So it's going to allow the interior to be flooded with light and allows expansive views out of the natural landscape, because this is like kind of somewhat in a forest, so it's secluded. So you'd love to have views from every side, every angle. Okay, so long interrupted spans of glass is number three. Number four is going to be, since the vertical piers and columns support the structure, instead of load-bearing walls, there's a freedom and flexibility about placement of interior walls. So the way the space is divided isn't dictated by load-bearing walls. So basically, it's just the vertical piers on the column are going to support the actual structure, And instead of the load-bearing walls, there's a freedom and flexibility about the placement of the interior walls. Okay, so that's going to be for number 4. And then the final one, number 5, is a roof garden on the top. A building should give back the space it takes up on the ground by replacing it with a garden in the sky. Okay. Almost done, guys. General international style characteristics, no ornamentation. So these are some characteristics. Please also have written down. They're extremely important. So for specifically for international style, we're going to see no ornamentation. It's made from non-traditional materials. So again, you can just list the materials that were for this: steel, glass, reinforced concrete. It uses and combines pure geometric forms. Most buildings have flat roofs. Okay. Most international styles, most international style buildings have flat roofs. Okay. And again, you can see that pure geometry, those rectilineal forms, everything is made out of shapes. Again, we're still kind of seeing that cubist kind of almost be dictated with this. With wide expanses of glass, there's no inner penetration of interior and exterior. Okay, so again, just being able to see from end to end of each side of this particular house with the view of the outside. Okay, so again, Le Corbusier reflects the machine aesthetic on appreciation for the modern machine as a beautiful object with its gleaming surfaces, geometric form, clean lines and precisions or finishes. It also implies an admiration for the efficiency of machines. So there's somewhat of a connection that he had with machinery. So it demonstrates these principles. It represents his philosophy that a basic structural frame allows complete freedom in terms of the placement of the interior and exterior of the walls. The second floor living area seems to flow on slender reinforced concrete columns above a smaller, deeply reinforced concrete columns above a smaller, excuse me, I repeated myself, recess entrance and service area on the ground. A private interior terrace opens a sky on the upper level. Okay. And then just to show you the video, you have another image. It's of a spiral staircase. And my only note for that is that it's a connection between the first and the second floor. And a ramp connects the first floor with the second terrace on the third floor. Okay. The video I wanted to show you, let me just pull that up. And this will conclude our slide for this one. There you go. Okay, over and out.